Bruce Vann, welcome back to Acquiring Minds.
Thank you for having me.
Bruce, we talked in January 2022, so about 14 months ago. You had acquired a stage curtain manufacturing business, and I thought it would be great to have you back on to just tell us how things have gone in the last year or so. First things first, though, Bruce, please just remind us why you chose the path to buy a business and a little bit more about Luxout, the business that you bought.
Sure. So long story short, I started my career in finance and had ended up in a career rut for a little while. So I was looking for a business to buy, searched for, let's say 6 or 7 months, ended up finding Luxout Products, which is, like you said, a stage curtain and drapery manufacturer, stage curtains and shades. And really thought the business was great and was a durable business. Had been around for a long time, since the 1940s, operated in a nice niche. So I bought it, started my search in January of 2019 and ended up acquiring on February the 14th of 2020, a month before the stuff hit the fan.
Great. Okay. So it's actually been 3 years that you've been in the business now. You survived COVID, which is we spent a lot of time talking about last time. How are you feeling now, 3 years in? How do you feel about this path of buying a business, and also about Luxout in particular, the business that you bought?
I think it's very much akin to, if you do anything, if you do any job, or it's just like anything. Like if you date a person, you have this time of limerence, and then eventually that kind of wears off. And you're dealing with the woes and the throes of dealing with that particular person. And I think that's the same way with the job. And I think that's the same way with an acquisition. I love the company dearly, and I think it's done very well for me. What stands out in my mind are the ways that the things that I want to improve. But still, overall, we've done fine. We've grown in the pandemic. We survived a time when nobody was on stages for several months. That was very, very scary. And it's a buoyant little business, just like I wanted to buy. So overall, I'd say it's great. And then it's allowed me also to afford to purchase other companies, which has been outstanding.
Yeah. And we're certainly going to hear about that. 2 follow-ups to this. So when you say that your attention is just drawn to all the things that are imperfect about it that you want to improve, and is that what's getting in the way of making those improvements? Is it just time, change management, or need more capital, or why can't you flip a switch and fix all those things tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a matter of, it's not needing more capital. It's more than anything, you have to have the right people and the right feedback loops in the markets that you want to participate in. And because my business has such a long sales cycle, it's very difficult to know what's really going on at any given time. It's sort of like, it's very much akin to what the people do at the Federal Reserve, or what these economists do, because it just takes so long to really notice a secular change. So that's one thing. The other thing is just getting the right people on board. Some folks show up to jobs or to work at a company, and they give their all. Other folks are like, okay, well, I'm just going to punch a clock and try to keep everything going and do the minimum until so no one fusses me out. And you really want to attract and retain and reward the first category, and you want to let go of the second category. And I think, especially given how tight the labor market has been over the 3 years that I've owned the company, in the 3 years I've owned the company, I don't think we've ever had unemployment over 4%.
Yeah.
And 4% that's full employment in the economy. So it's very tough to get people and keep them in there. But I think I have a pretty good plan going forward of what we need to do. And I feel pretty good about it. And I also really appreciate the team and my folks who've stuck by us all this time, both my staff and my company. And the third thing is just something always comes up. Like this past Friday, not to be too graphic, but a toilet clogged, and there was literally sewage coming up out of the bathroom, and I had to figure out a way to remove the toilet, drill that down, clean up and mop and all these different things. I had to stay extra or late on Friday just for that very reason. So there's always something on top of the strategic stuff. There's always something from an operational standpoint that kind of stands in the way of you, that tries to distract you from the North Star of what you really want to accomplish as a general manager or CEO of a business.
Bruce, you called it I think you said the buoyant little business that you had that you had envisioned, that you'd hoped for. So just more specifically on that, the numbers that you had projected and that you'd received from the seller 3 years ago, those played out, or were there any? I mean, is it basically as profitable as you had hoped and expected when you signed on the dotted line?
Yeah, good question. It's been a mixture. So it was more profitable in 2020 than it was in 2021. And it was about the same level of profitability in 2022. So far this year is kind of too early to tell, just because, like I said, of that long sales cycle. But it's been really great. I mean, I got a heck of a deal on this company. So yeah, it was there.
And with the profitability, the question, of course, is what to do with that cash. Do you expand if you see growth opportunity in this business? And maybe if you don't see huge growth opportunities in the business, you could put in an operator to do what you're doing, the day-to-day operations, and step out and go look for your next acquisition or adventure. This is probably going to play into, the acquisition that you did make, the answer to this question. But how are you thinking about what to do with the cash that the business is generating?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's actually the question that keeps me up at night, because I'm the type of person where I'm not, the goal is not necessarily to make money. My goal is to manage well. The hand that I feel like I've been dealt, I want to play the hand really, 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 really well. And if you have some cash and you're not using it, it's not going to work. And I feel like I'm not playing it well. The question of how to expand is, fortunately, it's kind of two-sided. So for the base business, it's the only way to really expand is to go into new geographies or to hit the geographies that you're currently in harder and get the right person to hit those geographies harder. So that's really like a people-centered kind of problem. For the shades business, the best way to expand is to have a solid digital product. And we've been working on that for 3 years, and that's been extremely challenging. Matter of fact, there's a gentleman I wouldn't call him a gentleman. There's a scoundrel in New York who's conned my company and my predecessor and me out of a decent amount of money to build a new website with the functionality that we would need in order to better service our customers there and to really kind of hit the growth trajectory that the previous owner envisioned and that I definitely buy into and see as extremely, like, very low hanging fruit if we can just get there. The other thing, in terms of your question about whether to put an operator in, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting an operator in until I feel like we're at the scale, like at the proper scale, and have the proper operations necessary to, for someone to come in and do that. Because there's a lot of this is operational, a lot of it is also strategic. A lot of what I do requires being strategic and trying to look at the numbers and figure out the story that they're telling you and whatnot. And not everybody has the skill set to read the tea leaves, so to speak, and understand exactly what's going on, and how to pivot and adjust as an organization. So once we get there, then maybe I will, maybe I won't, we'll see. So.
And so just so we understand your business, stage curtains are, of course, the heavy, tall, big fabric curtains that you'll see at a stage at an auditorium in a school or a church or at a theater. So that's one core piece of the business. And then you referred to the shades business as well. So shades for consumers, or what is the shades piece of the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the shades piece of the business, we have built Lux Out Shades as where we try to focus on designers and being the go-to shades for interior designers. that market is a little hard to go after, and it would be significantly easier if we had the proper digital products. So what I would like for everything to happen, from the way I want everything to work, there's someone goes and says, hey, I want this, and these fabrics. And they go click on the website and they figure out the sizes and the type of shade that they want, and they get their quote and they can go buy it. It's seamless. Just seamless from the end to end. What we have right now is there's a lot of touch. There's a lot of human element to it. It's very kind of antiquated, with the way that we do it. And we're trying to, move that forward. But if we can do that, we should be fine. I would be that realistically, the shades piece of the business can probably become bigger than the stage curtain piece of the business, which is the bread and butter of the base business right now. Does that answer your question?
And so that's interior designers who do custom shades in kind of fancy houses.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. You think about it, like in some of these places, people can spend $100,000 on their shades alone in their house.
Yeah.
And that's nothing to thumb your nose at if you can get a bunch of those all at one time. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Now tell us about the acquisition that you did.
Yeah. So
the blinds one, and then we'll get to the machinery one.
Okay, sure. So the acquisition was actually a pretty cool story. So I was doing what I do best, which is talk about things to random people. And I was talking with a gentleman, and he wanted to do, was interested in doing a search. And then he ended up doing one, and one of his interns found Blinds and More. It was a little bit too small for them. But he said, hey, Bruce, I came across this. You may want to check it out. He sent it my way. I didn't think it was going to be, something that I would end up buying. Cause obviously at that time I was also trying to get something larger also, but it worked out and ended up being great. And we had a great transition, and I got it at a solid multiple. And if I'm fortunate, I want to try to buy some more, that are in this space, the same space, these drapery stores, cause they're nice little businesses. And I think they're kind of poised for someone to come in and consolidate, and hopefully that someone's me.
Well, I want to dive into that thesis a little bit, but first tell us more about the business. Blinds and More. First of all, is that a franchise? It's a franchisee location?
Good question. It's not a franchise. The strange thing about the window treatments industry is there are a lot of these like sort of mom and pop window treatment stores that are for sale, and they're owned by people who are getting of retirement age. And so some of them they have to retire. But a lot of them are dealers of these companies called like Hunter Douglas or Norman or Graver, a lot of these window treatment stores. And some of them they only sell one of those products, or some of them, like Blinds and More, sell all of those different products. But it's not exactly a franchise, but the model it's kind of franchise-esque, if you will, in that the manufacturer, like a Hunter Douglas, would try to come to you and say, hey, look, okay, put up $50,000 to $100,000 and start your own store. And you can make X amount of dollars. And this is what and you can put it in these locations and this. So like it can be kind of a dealer model in some cases. Exactly. Yeah. It's a dealer model. And what I really like about it is, from a working capital's perspective, it's fantastic. I mean, you get half of your money up front. You carry no inventory. That's great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so how big was it? You had mentioned that this business, you thought it would probably be too small for you, but then you ended up liking it. Give us some numbers around this Blinds and More business.
Sure. Revenue roughly around a little bit more than $1 million. That puts you there. And then in terms of EBITDA, depending on how you would calculate EBITDA, we'll say more than 100, less than 4. Makes sense?
Okay. Between 100 and 400,000 in EBITDA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so are these, and it's all retail, right? So you're selling to consumers?
Yes. Mainly, I mean, there's a few contract customers, but it's mainly to consumers. Yeah.
Okay. And given that it's, as you said, window treatments, is there any, overlap or synergy with Luxout, with the existing business?
Yes, if I can get everybody to play nice in the sandbox together. So for example, one of the things that we immediately started to do was, workroom orders, right? Like, so custom drapery, was being sold out of Blinds and More. And the source was another company. What we've done now is I've given Luxout the first dibs, for that. And then my gut says once I kind of get our shades to our shades website to the level of the user experience that I wanted to be at, I think we'll be in a much better place to try to get these, folks who are pretty much like Blinds and More to do exactly what we want them to do, which is shop with us for our shades. I think we have a very competitive, product there. So we're getting there. It's just slower than one had hoped. And that one is me.
And did you buy Blinds and More as an individual, or did Luxout buy Blinds and More?
Good question. I had Luxout purchase all the shares of the company.
Oh, okay.
So I did.
And why did you do it that way? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, good question. Well, I tend to like stock sales better than asset sales. That's just me. And I think you can also get a better multiple and have a better outcome. It's also easier to get the working capital if you do a stock sale. If you do an asset sale and you start parsing things out in all these different ways, you just kind of, to me, I see a risk there of running out of cash. And obviously my biggest concern whenever I'm buying a business is in that first 90 days, I cannot run out of cash. That just cannot be a scenario. So that's the reason I did that. So those two businesses were done with stock sales. The other one was done as an asset sale.
And on Blinds and More. So even though there's some overlap, it's kind of the large umbrella of kind of the window treatments industry. It's a retail business, which is a very different type of business. So do you have, and I assume for kind of a smallish business like that, the owner seller was somebody who was actually at the store pretty often, or not necessarily? What is who's in that store day to day? And because I assume there's some key man risk here.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think so. And what sort of absolved that concern for me was the previous seller who had built this business from nothing. Essentially, she started it in 2007. By the time I bought the business, she had already moved out of state for several months. So it was running on its own, with the staff that's here. So there are two, front desk, ladies. There's one full-time salesperson, and then we have part-time installer and then some third-party installers also. So it's a pretty lean operation.
And then, so tell us a little bit more about this opportunity that you see in all of these retail blinds businesses that are pretty small, but lots of retiring owners, lots of them, nicely profitable, maybe not that individually, not that very interesting as by businesses by themselves, but aggregating a few of them together gets pretty interesting pretty quickly. So what was your discovery there?
Yeah, I mean, my discovery is that this is a great way to expand, and probably a fairly seamless path to do so. So for one of the major differences between Luxout and Blinds and More with the way that we do, with the way that they do business and the way that they install, is that Blinds and More would only install mainly in a smaller geographical area, let's say the south side of Hampton Roads, whereas Luxout will go much further. Luxout, we will go past Baltimore all the way into South Carolina, if we have to, and that's just the Mid-Atlantic. That's not even counting the other states that we're in, like Florida and Texas. So the geographic footprint is much larger. So my thought, this is just my thesis, is if I can get stores that are in some of these places that are further out and reach a little bit, I can cut down on the travel, and use the installer bases that are in these locations and hopefully have something good to show for it at the end of it. So that's my big hairy dream, if I can get my wife on board, is to have several of these. We'll say I would love to have about 15, 20 of them. And if we could do that, both ends of the business would be kind of hitting on all cylinders.
And so I understand. So your curtains and shades, when you sell them, the installation of them, I imagine, installing like a theater curtain is fairly complex and technical. So you need specialized talent to do that. And currently you have to send your own people expensively out to the customer destination to do that. And versus if you had an on the ground team in the form of a blind store, you could train those people up on installing their curtains and shades too, I guess.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you're installing stage curtains, they're really just big draperies. So, and they're much more forgiving than other than traditional window treatments like shades and smaller curtains and all of that. Because they're so much bigger, they have to be more forgiving. But it does require a certain level of training and understanding and familiarity with them in order to know how to install them and bring them, move them forward. The other part of that geographic constraint is the measuring of the curtains, too. So like some of our competitors, if they would get let's say they got a call from someone in Idaho, right? In such a niche product, they said, hey, this school in Idaho or this theater in Idaho says, hey, look, we need new curtains. We've had this theater for a long time. These curtains are 20 years old. They're tattered and they have lead weights in them, and we don't want lead around people. We need new ones. That place may call someone else and they may try to walk them through over the phone how to do the measurement. I'm trying to get us to the place where we would, of course, with a trip charge, but we will be willing to go out to wherever the customer wants us to go and measure the stage for them, and just have the soup to nuts experience for it. That's really where I want to bring the culture with of my team, to, and the availability of the reach of the business.
And so if you had a blind store in Boise, then you wouldn't even have to fly people out. They'd be in state already.
Exactly.
Cool.
They say from an operational perspective, it's Timwood, and that first one is in Timwood and this is from business school, is travel. So if you can cut down travel, you can cut down a lot of waste. Yeah.
Do you think that your concept for buying up retiring owners of blinds businesses is interesting for people who don't already own a stage curtain and shades business? Because you're envisioning a synergy that you can take advantage of, which is like this real strategic synergy for you. Are these blind stores interesting in their own right?
I think so. It depends on who you talk to, right? Like, so a lot of the folks that probably listen to you will want to go after larger targets for the most part. And that's kind of the bias of people in the search community in general. I think there's a lot of value. This is just me. I think there's a lot of value in going for these places that have, the mid to low six figures of EBITDA and just getting a whole bunch of them. Even if you weren't in the position like I am to have a stage curtain company, I just think there's a lot of value in that. Because if you can do that and have that in an industry, you can then become an effective an attractive target, for a much larger organization, which is kind of what everybody wants anyway. So you got to think big by thinking small, in my opinion.
Well, speaking of which, are there bigger fish in the stage curtain world that would acquire you? Or is it too small an industry to have some really big companies in it?
There are definitely bigger fish. I don't know if they would be in a position to acquire us. The stage curtain industry is kind of all over the place. I've seen, basically I'll say this. I've seen companies that are much larger than us and that have the exact same profitability that we do. Which is wild to me. but I've seen that. So I don't know if there's anybody who has like a really good, I don't know. I don't have a really good answer to that. What I do know is I think, I'll put it this way. I think I should, if someone wants to sell to me in the industry, we should have that conversation. But if someone else wanted to buy, there may be some room out there to have those conversations. I just don't know if they would really I don't know if they would really understand the secret sauce of what makes, Lux Out great. Yeah. And I don't mean to talk your head off about it, but I just know the way that we execute for all the challenges in the feast or famine in the business, the way that we execute is just way better than everybody else that I've ever heard of in my industry. And you can see it from the customer reviews. We just do a really good job.
And is that to your credit, or is that to the previous owner's credit, or both?
I wouldn't say it's so much mine. Well, some of it is, the only part I would say is mine is that I get reviews. I hammered my team to say, hey, look, get reviews from your customers, get reviews from your customers. Doesn't matter what we say about ourselves. It only matters what the customer says about us. But I think more than anything, it's just the folks that we have on the ground there. My hat is really off to the team, at Lux Out. Sales, plant manager is really great. The folks who work in the workroom, cut, sew, and serge and pack the curtains, all of it, the way we do the coordination and the back office coordination, all of these different parts do an excellent job, overall. And I think we do significantly better than anybody else.
Bruce, we're wrapping up here, but I wanted to ask a couple more questions.
Sure.
You just touched on the feast or famine nature of the business. So this is obviously, particularly on the stage curtain side. Well, what, in terms of revenue, what is the split between stage curtains and shades?
About 80-20.
Okay. So it's mostly stage curtain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe 75-25, but yeah, around there. Yeah.
Okay. So stage curtains have a lifespan of 20 years more, maybe. So anyway, no recurring revenue, and certainly in COVID, when and it's all dependent on people. The stage curtains exist in communal spaces where theaters where people are going to watch something stages. So that was obviously extremely vulnerable during COVID. But in reflecting back on the business that you bought in the feast or famine nature of it versus what, of course, everybody would kind of ideally want, recurring. Is it fine? Is it like, this is just, I just factor this into my model, my financial model, that there's going to be thin months and then there's going to be awesome months? Or is it a nagging constant concern? Because I often just kind of feel about this argument for recurring revenue. Of course, we all understand why it's appealing, but at the same time, it always feels to me like as long as you model in that you're going to have swings, then you should be fine as long as you're planning for that. So maybe disabuse me of that, or is in fact that how you feel?
I think it is. I think it's overall fine. It doesn't feel fine when you're going through the famine parts. But overall it's fine. The reason that it's feast or famine in my business is just because, well, one is because of the long sales cycle. Two, it's because of, because it can take so long, like, because that sales, actually really, that's just really the reason. It's really the long sales cycle. If you order something today, it may not be, we would place the order for the materials today. And then let's say today, where we're talking in March, that thing wouldn't get installed until maybe June or July. And everybody and their cousin wants everything installed before school starts. So that's really the kind of the nature of it. So it's the same thing that saved me during the pandemic is the same thing that gives me worry during the times of famine. But overall, it's worked out really well. And I think you just like you say, you just factor in the math. The other thing is if you acquire something with recurring revenue, you're probably going to pay a more aggressive multiple because everybody and their cousin wants that. So if you can get something at a lower multiple, that does not have that, And then there's still some part of what we do that is a little bit recurring. Like, for example, some school districts will come to us and say, hey, look, we know we're going to do X number of schools per year and we want you to check them out. We've put it in the budget. We want you to check them out and quote them for us. And those are like really great customers. If I could have those customers everywhere, that'd be wonderful. So it's a mixed bag, but overall it's okay. I hope. Yeah.
I think the point that you've now made a couple times about your long sales cycle is actually a really valuable point to harp on a little bit, because so many searchers, the underlying thesis, not some industry thesis, but the underlying thesis of almost like search itself is that there's a lot of improvements to be made in a business that you buy because the seller, founder, whatever, hasn't been proactive about their business or isn't tech forward or whatever it might be. And so, searchers get in there and they're eager to improve the business. And of course, delivery of the product or service is what the business does. And so if you have this long sales cycle, you get so many less at bats per month, per year to iterate and figure out where the low hanging fruit is, figure out where those efficiencies can be found. That's a really interesting point. And so maybe a criteria that people listening should consider is, in addition to recurring or not recurring, is how long that sales cycle is. Because if you've got a 6-month sales cycle versus, a plumbing business where you've got multiple jobs per day, you've just got so much more input that you can work with to figure out how to refine and improve the business versus a long manufacturing and sales cycle. It's really interesting.
And I would add to that, to the point that also I made, that tangential point that I made earlier, if you can have a long sales cycle and you can collect some portion of your capital up front, then from a working capital perspective, you're in a much better place, because it gives you a certain level of safety. Because say, for example, someone orders $40,000 worth of stage curtains from us, and they're a new customer. We never heard from them before. And my salesperson talks them into putting half down. All right. So we get $20,000. I don't have to pay on whatever pieces were ordered for that job for like another, I don't know, the stuff may come 3 months later, and then I don't have to pay until 30 days after it comes. So that's like 4 months. So I got basically a no interest loan for $20,000 for 4 months. And because of the long sales cycle and of that. So that's one of the other things that kind of can be attractive if you don't have recurring revenue, with a business.
Yeah. Great point. Bruce, wrap us up with your second kind of quote unquote acquisition. I mean, it is an acquisition, but not of a business, of a what?
Yeah, of a machine. So we purchased a ribbon weight machine. It is the only one of its kind.
Ribbon weight machine.
Yeah. So at the bottom of stage curtains, stage curtains generally will have weights. They would either be chain weights, like iron or steel chain, or lead weights. They used to use lead. And if you go into, hotel rooms and you check the bottom weights in your hotel room, if you can bend it, it's lead. And you don't want that. You don't want that near anybody, honestly, but you especially don't want that with your kids. But our alternative is to have this fabric that's folded in half, that has little steel weights in there. And the fabric is kind of fused, once it's folded in half. And those ribbon weights, we use them ourselves, but we also sell them to other, stage curtain companies, around the country. And we're the only one of our kind with it. And the machine, I don't mind telling you what I purchased for the machine for, but because it was kind of industry wide knowledge what the guy was selling it for. But I talked him down on the price. I got the machine for less than $300, and it cost me a couple tens of thousands to move it. But that thing is replacing would be somewhere around, definitely somewhere north of $1.5 million if I had to replace it. So I like to think I got a pretty good deal. And also have kind of built a little bit of an economic moat around my business. So,
yeah. That's interesting. That's such a kind of, manufacturing business phenomenon where, a large piece of machinery can be this big strategic move. It's not something that I'm super well versed in. But it was $1.5 million machine new. You got it for $300. It was in Atlanta, as I recall, and you had to move it up to Richmond, which was costly and complicated. And were you a customer of this the business who owned the machine in it before?
Yes, I was, and real nice guy. Built it with his son, but some years back, and then he and his wife ended up moving out of the country and really retiring. And this was the last peg before they retired. So, I've purchased 3 businesses from 3 retirees now. Yeah.
The silver tsunami is real, people.
Yeah.
And so are you now selling to some of your competitors because they need this, the ribbon, what did you call it? The ribbon weight?
Yeah.
What was it called?
Yeah, it's called a ribbon weight. You got it.
The ribbon weight. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We sell to competitors, and the window treatment industry in general is like, it's kind of, it's interesting. It's not like as cutthroat as other industries. Like competitors will help one another out and buy supplies from each other. For example, when we sell our track, one of our main competitors is Rose Brand out of New Jersey. We tend to get our track from a company they own called ADC out of Pennsylvania. So it's not uncommon in this industry to have stuff like that happen. It was weird to me when I first got in the industry, but it's less weird now. Well,
it bodes well for if in fact you joked that there's not a big fish out there to buy you. Maybe you should be buying, you would be the buyer in this industry. If you develop good relationships with your competition, maybe.
Right.
Matter of fact, why don't I ask you, because in our first conversation, you did mention like, it's a small enough business industry that there's like you in Virginia, and then there's like not somebody else until Pennsylvania. Maybe that's who you just were referring to. And then again, south of you, not somebody until the Carolinas or like South Carolina. And do you think there's an opportunity for yourself ever to buy one of those businesses, or does it not strategically make sense, or what?
I would absolutely buy one of them if I could get them at a solid, under solid terms, acceptable terms to me. I would absolutely buy one of them. Yeah, I think the hard part of that is just that when people sell their businesses initially, they think they're valued too much. They think you can get 8-9 times EBITDA for a business that's not growing. That's the first thing. And then you kind of come down to earth over time.
Yeah.
But if anybody's listening in the industry or any brokers that know anybody that's selling in the industry, please feel free to reach out to me because I'm absolutely interested.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't happen until maybe next year, because Bruce has another new business on the way with his wife, and so she is pumping the brakes on you, you making more business moves until that baby comes. Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you, man. That's the other thing a lot of people don't think about is having your significant other and family on board with you in this search journey, and if you're going to continue to do future acquisitions, like it doesn't end with the one. I think my wife kind of had the expectation that, okay, well, you've done 1. Okay. Now you've done 2. Okay. Well, now you've done 3. Can you slow down? And in my head, it's like, no, I can't slow down because I have to allocate the capital. But we're figuring that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great, Bruce. Anything that you would want to tell the audience that I forgot to ask?
And the only other thing I would say is, there's a whole lot of crap going on in the world, and there's always going to be something that happens. There's always going to be some pandemic or banking crisis or something big and scary that makes you say, oh, okay, I'm not going to take the plunge and whatnot. I think if somebody wants to go and do this, you can make every excuse not to do it. You can make every excuse to do it if it's really in you. So, I would encourage folks to just go after it and to just let the chips fall where they may and see what happens, because fortune favors the bold. So.
Awesome note to end on. Bruce Vann, thank you very much for coming back on, sir. Oh, and for people who might want to reach out, what's your preferred method of communication? I'll link to it all in the notes.
Sure. It's just email. It's bvann with 2 N's at luxout, luxout.com. Anyone wants to reach out, I'm more than happy to talk.
Great. And also a plug for a couple of threads that you have put on Search Funder. One of your early ones, or I don't know if it was early, but the first one that I saw of yours was why we connected in the first place. It was like your 5 or 7 learnings from first week or first month as CEO. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It just gave a window into what it's like to transition a business. But I've seen subsequent posts that you've made as well. So people on Search Funder should look up Bruce Vann, 2 N's. Bruce, until next time, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Will.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come, stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.